Sierra's got the day off today, and we are awaiting our speaker right now. And we are not recording yet, so we're just here sort of in warm-up mode. We'll get started in about 3 minutes. And if our speaker is not here for some reason, we've got some other things that we can chat with you about. So I haven't done a webinar myself in a while. How long has it been, guys? It's been several months. So just a bunch of update stuff that we can get.
I think about 2 months, I guess.
Well, I mean, I've hosted, but I just haven't done one.
Yeah, not yourself, like you're hosting.
Right, right. I'm using my ear pods today for the audio. Does that work all right? Is that good?
Work perfectly. Awesome.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Like I told everybody earlier, it's our coolest day here, and since probably May is.
She's
It
on.
looks like Alexsandra is here. Very cool. So everybody, we'll get started in about a minute. Our speaker today, Alexsandra, just came into the waiting room, so she's probably getting her mic ready and everything here. So we'll get started.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you just fine.
Wonderful.
And if you can open up your webcam, we will be able to see.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect.
There she is.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well.
Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on with us. We were just sort of doing a little warm-up mode. So, Mark, why don't you go ahead and start recording, and we can get started. Awesome. Well, hey, everybody. We are so excited here today to have Alexsandra with us. It's Alexsandra. I think Marie was saying you make a little bit of a break in between there. And your last name, is it pronounced Guerra or is it Guerra? Sometimes it could be either way.
Yeah, no, it's the latter. So Guerra is war in Spanish.
Guerra. All right, Guerra. Alexsandra Guerra. And I have not met before. We have not met, so this is going to be fun. We're just going to chat with each other. So don't be nervous. And in the background, Mark and Arib will scroll through your different pages and have some things on the screen. If anything pops up on the screen that you're interested in talking about, just bring it up and we can stop the screen and chat about it. For the audience, put some questions in. Sometimes you guys get shy. Get your fingers typing and put in some questions for Alexsandra. And I'm going to give just a brief announcement. Next week sometime, we're going to schedule another webinar where I'm just going to come on just to give a brief update. We haven't done one for EAT generally in probably 3 months. So that'll come on the calendar. And it's just going to be Mark and Arib and Sierra and I giving an update, and that's not yet scheduled, so we'll send out an email that will announce it and put it on social media and so on. So just a brief announcement for that. And that done, it's time to get going with Alexsandra. So again, we haven't met, but I'm excited about Nori, and why don't we start there? Why don't you start by talking about the Nori carbon removal marketplace and tell us where Nori comes from and what that word means.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Alexsandra Guerra. I'm one of the co-founders of Nori. So I've been here since the beginning of the company, which started about 4 years ago. Actually, it's our anniversary month. So we, myself and my co-founders, are environmentalists and in different aspects, whether we're coming from tech or otherwise, or policy. We wanted to see something that would help scale the removing CO2 from the atmosphere as a way of reversing emissions, right? So a lot has been focused and a lot of work is being done in decarbonizing our energy grid, our transportation infrastructure. But yet, even with all of that, we have emitted 1.5 trillion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution. That's a lot. 1.5 trillion tons, to give you scales, is just a massive amount. So, and we emit about 32 gigatons every year. So my co-founders and I have been, came together about 4 years ago, and there you go, consensus, here's our timeline. It's perfect. So the consensus blockchain for social impact hackathon was when we came together and tried out this idea. And I was working actually in solar energy at Southern California Edison on clean energy. And that was my entire space, was always on climate and energy production. I'm an engineer by background. And we did this 5-week hackathon to test out the idea. And for me, I was testing out both the idea and the team. And I had been an entrepreneur on the side for a while, trying to build up a business around climate change, and nothing really stuck. So after 3 years of doing that at SCE, I just kind of thought, I'm going to climb this corporate social ladder. Then the team got together and we did this hackathon, and we won it, the hackathon for energy and environment. And then I quit my job, and we all kind of just founded Nori and went like running as quickly as possible. We published a white paper. Yeah, that was the first time I met those guys, that photo. Those are my co-founders, including some that joined later. So yeah, we are focused on building a marketplace that will help prove financial incentive for anyone, anywhere around the world to remove carbon from the atmosphere and get paid for doing that. This can be natural systems or more industrial type ways to do this. So right now, we're working with farmers. It was out of all the ways to remove CO2, we decided, there you go, starting in 2018, we finally published our Croplands Methodology, which helps any farmer who's switching over to regenerative agricultural practices, which results in CO2 being sequestered from the atmosphere and stored in soil, can get paid for doing that. And then we're kind of hoping this is like going to be starting a flywheel effect where a farmer can see that there are farmers in Nori getting paid for carbon, and that they can get additional income and make that practice changes, because it costs a lot of money to change the way you farm. So I could keep going, but I think that's enough to stop. Ask your own question.
That's a great place to start. So on that side, let's stay with the ag side for a second, because I'm a farmer. I've been a farmer for many, many years, and have a ranch in Colorado, and we do farm and ranch what we believe is fairly regeneratively. So, but we didn't originally. We didn't years ago. So, is it something that gets paid to farmers based on some metrics that you've created, and you apply those metrics to their farming operations? So just again, overview. How does that work for a farmer? Yeah,
man, whoever's controlling this screen is awesome, and like navigating to the page, I would love to keep scrolling down there. There's a section right below there that perfect. So first, farmers provide information about their land, and they might highlight this on Google Maps where their fields are, what they planted, when, what type of fertilizer, what type of irrigation, what type of tillage, non-intensive, etc. I think you understand. This is like, you would need to have good record of what you planted, where, and when. It takes anywhere from 2 to 6 months to do this record collection to create the project. Once that's done, once we have that information, step 2 is we send it to an independent third party called Soil Metrics. Soil Metrics is a tool that was funded actually in Colorado by CSU. It was funded by the USDA and developed at CSU, and is now spun out as its own private entity. But it's a model that takes in information about how did you manage your land, and then estimates how much is emitted, the greenhouse gas emissions and CO2e from that land over a period of time. So we use them as a model to baseline what it was like before you adopted practices, as well as what does it look like after you've adopted new practices, reducing the intensity of your tillage, planting cover crops, etc. And then we also have the third step is farmers have to get a third-party verifier to verify 3 key things, which is one, that that farmer has the legal rights to list the land, because you're going to sign a contract with Nori saying you're going to maintain certain practices or do certain things and provide data every year. 2, that the project isn't listed anywhere else. We're not double selling these credits. And then 3, they review the data. They do an audit to make sure that the data provided, is accurate. And then 4 is we end up issuing these digital certificates for every ton. We call them NRTs, for every ton of CO2 removed and stored in the atmosphere, stored in soil, excuse me. And then 5, we sell those to customers.
Cool. So how many, what's the metrics on how many people you've worked with, how many are in the program, and so on?
Yeah, at nori.com/registry, there we have a list of all the projects that we've worked with. We are right now on our 6th supplier. So if you wanted to navigate to registry at the end instead of generate, there you go. This is how every webinar should be done. This is fantastic. I've never had someone do this for me. So if you scroll down, you can see in that first table all the farmers that we've been able to help support. And so Harborview Farms, Trey Hill sold 14,000. The next project was 22,000 tons, etc. We sold out of 5 projects, and we're currently selling from Adam Ulrich there at the bottom. And he's got about 10,000 NRTs left to sell. I think today we sold, about 4,584. So he's got 10,000 left. And we're growing. We have a lot more farmers who are in the pipeline in the stages of getting verification. They've submitted all their information, and now they're getting a third-party verifier to go through that checklist of things, make sure that they can be listed.
Very cool. You didn't go to either of the Permaculture 1 or Permaculture 2 in San Diego, did you? And maybe we met there.
No, I did not. No. Sounds nice though.
Anyway.
I've been wanting to do like a permaculture class, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But it's one of those things on the bucket list things. When I have enough money to like buy land, then it's gonna be a whole thing.
So another cue earlier, you mentioned Southern California. You worked for Southern California Edison. Are you a Southern Californian? Let's go back in your history a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I'm actually right now in Miami, Florida, which is where I'm from originally. And it's kind of full circle. My whole journey started here because I was born and raised to Cuban immigrants in Miami. And when I was 15, the conversation started about global warming. Climate change wasn't quite the term at the time. We were saying global warming and sea level rise, and we had just come from a drought, and I don't know, it was just very in tune with nature, and it was very nerdy. And this whole concept of global warming and sea level rise really scared me. It startled me. And so, when I was 17, I saw a professor from Columbia University in New York City talking about this a technology called direct air capture, where they had artificial trees, some technology that when the air blew over it could sequester CO2 and then absorb as much CO2 in one area as 1,000 trees. And I said, I want to study that, and that's what we're going to do, and focus on climate change and removing CO2 from the atmosphere. And I got into Columbia, which is not that easy, and so it was wonderful. And we have financial aid because they have a great endowment program. Financial aid program. And then I studied with that professor. I didn't end up actually liking the chemistry. Like it was like a certain type of chemistry I didn't like. I ended up going completely into thermodynamics and loved studying heat transfer, mass transfer. And I went and I started a PhD at UC Irvine. And then I just, at that point now, years later, I'm feeling a lot of urgency around climate change, and I dropped out. And I worked for Southern California Edison. I got recruited, and I thought, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start working on solutions today, because we can't wait for some brilliant PhD person to do 4 years of research and come up with something else. So then I went, from LA, so Miami, New York, LA, and then I quit that job, to start Nori in Seattle. And then right before the pandemic, I moved back to Miami to be closer to my family. So.
Did you truly get there before the pandemic? So you were kind of lucky that you got there.
I did, and it was so funny because my colleague didn't want me to leave because he still feels very strongly about co-location, and I said I'm sorry, I got to this. It wasn't the right fit for me, Seattle, and I really missed my roots and my home, and I had been away for a long time, and I went back, and it was March 1st I got back, and then on March 4th everybody went remote, and it made no difference that I was the one person who was remote. And it still makes very little difference, especially now with the whole home remote. So it worked out in my favor, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of commonalities. So I'll throw out the first one that most people will not get. You are a co-anteater. And so... So I have my bachelor's from Irvine, and then I was mentored by a couple of guys. So I have a double major from Irvine in engineering and biology, and almost all of my classmates were pre-med. So I was the rare person that was really only interested in ecology, and so two of the profs in ecology became really good friends, and then they were very helpful in getting me into to Scripps, Institute of Oceanography in San Diego. And specifically, I worked on a project that was funded by Southern California Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric, looking at the effects of temperature primarily, but also chemistry. So I actually focused on the chemistry side eventually of the effluent from power plants into the ocean through the process of cooling the power plants. And then what people didn't realize, and this is a long time ago, but at that time, they would allow water to be discharged during cleanings of the power plants that was as much as 15 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the seawater that it was encountering. And there were massive die-offs that would occur during those discharges, and they were usually from like 2 in the morning till 4 in the morning, and they thought they could get away with nobody seeing them. Anyway, bottom line is that they got caught essentially, and it did lead to some major changes, and that power plants are not allowed to do that any longer. But my lab was at the Carlsbad SDG&E power plant, where I had built a building that was like this metal shed out on a point to where I could sample and do things out with the water discharge. I'm a surfer also, grew up in Southern California, and so the beach right there was right, I walked across the 101 and I was at the beach, and so it was very cool. And so we're co-anteaters, and I also was a SCE funded researcher. They provided funds. I never even interacted with them. I don't know how the joint program with SDG&E worked, because my interaction was almost always with SDG&E. So. And then anyway, I left there and went up to Idaho because I wanted to get out of Southern California. I was a little bit tired of the big city and everything that was occurring in that way, and was able to get a PhD there, also in freshwater ecology, in a whole different kind of environment, and then ultimately ended up here in Colorado, where I've been for most of my life now. So it was cool.
That's cool.
Anyway,
it's interesting to think, because when I was working at SCE and I was living in Huntington Beach at the time,
I went to Fountain Valley High School. So.
Oh, okay, so yeah, but one of the things was that you can't just discharge the water right into the local waterways, and I guess just being young and ignorant, I don't think about like how did we get to that conclusion? Like, what was the things that there was probably someone who had to do research and like do a lot of convincing and sharing of data to get people to not do a thing and to recognize that it was harmful.
Yeah, and I think I was one of those. And I actually have a number of published articles that I get more requests for today than I've ever gotten, which is very encouraging about what those impacts were. I was also an activist, and when they built the San Onofre, so Fountain Valley, and if you didn't go away, Fountain Valley is immediately adjacent to Huntington Beach, and my high school was literally across the street from it was Huntington Beach. So I only lived 2.5 miles from the pier at Huntington. So that's where I would surf, or I would surf at 17th Street, which was up the way a little bit. But anyway, bottom line is on the temperature side, when nuclear plants started to come in, and so San Onofre was the first of those, they were going to discharge water at even higher temperatures. So I handcuffed myself to the gate of San Onofre power plant with a number of other people, stopping the construction traffic from coming into it. And we all got arrested, and that became front page news in the LA Times back when I was in high school. And so, we were activists at that time. And it was real clear from surfing when they would do these discharges, because the water was always warmer at beaches around power plants. And so that's what we went to surf, because water there's cold. People ever think Southern California, it's warm water. It's never really warm in Southern California, not like Miami, for example. So we would go to warmer places, but I would see, or I'd feel it even when they do these discharges, that fish would be dying. You'd see it right in the water, and you'd see that it didn't take much to look and see what the issues were. And so anyway, that was a long time. That was in the 70s. So
impressive.
a while ago. So, anyway, what is Nori? Is that a Native American word? Is it? What's the genesis of the word?
It's a seaweed. It's a seaweed you eat in sushi. Yeah.
So
when we
okay.
I mentioned that hackathon. Right after the hackathon, we had decided we were going to go through with creating the company, and so then we did additional couple workshops, like hour-long workshops that our CEO, co-founder Paul led us through, like a mood board, like what were some of the things that feelings we wanted to elicit with regard to climate change in our company, and we wanted to focus more on the hopeful things as opposed to like the dread and the doom and the gloom. We wanted to make people feel like there was agency, light, something light and nature-based. And the whole exercise ended up us having like different ecosystems, and one of them was oceans. And then, someone said oyster, and I said no. And then someone said nori, and then we all kind of said, yeah, nori, that's a nice one, and that's what stuck. And it was cute, just a cute name.
Where'd you live when you were at Irvine? Because you're a grad student there. You must have lived off campus somewhere.
Yeah,
probably somewhere cheap.
I lived in I was a grad student. I was in Park West.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't even remember. This is so bad. Like, this is the information. I don't even remember my addresses. I think the other day I had to verify where I had lived previously. Like, I can't remember 3 years back. But yeah.
It's changed. It's changing all the time. So when I went there, a lot of people don't know this, but the original Planet of the Apes movie, was filmed on the UC Irvine campus. And at that time, there was one loop road around with all the buildings that are on the inside, which actually that hasn't changed much. That's still the same. The eucalyptus trees were tiny, with stems like this, and now they're like this. But there also was just no development around there. I mean, it was like in the middle of nowhere. You were going out into the country to be at the campus. So, so let's go back to your youth again and tell us someone who had an impact on your life when you were before college, let's say high school age, because you said you were really enamored at 15 with some things that were climate change related, other than your parents. So either a person or persons who really had an impact on you.
I gotta be honest, there are two, and they were both my science teachers. One was my 7th grade science teacher, and one was my freshman high school science teacher. So Miss Santos in 7th grade and Mr. Beltran when I was a freshman. And I don't know. I enjoyed the subject, and they were just people and individuals who saw that I was passionate or just interested, and that there was, I don't know, an interest beyond the normal. And they fostered that like any farmer of, I guess teachers are like farmers of children's minds, right? And you just kind of pass it off. And they really helped to, I don't know, encourage that curiosity. And I loved it. Like I really, having really great teachers meant everything. Otherwise, how do you get curious about anything? And then how do you feel inspired and passionate? And like you have like empowerment to do something about it. So teachers, high school and middle school teachers.
So same for me. Like I told you, they were very important. Let's take us forward till today. Who would be somebody that you really look at as a hero that's out there in the either, let's say, the carbon world or the regenerative ag or regenerative living world, whatever? Is there several names that you can give us?
I don't know. Like there are a couple that are coming to mind, but I think it's just like because they're easy to come to mind. Like they're well known, like Paul Hawken,
Okay.
Paul Stamets, Paul's apparently around the world. But
well, I don't think, like, for example, I don't think Stamets is that well known. I mean, Paul Hawken obviously is, and Stamets is a friend of mine. He's been a speaker here, so.
Nice.
But he wouldn't consider himself even really that well. You've studied that area well enough to know. Do you know of Elaine Ingham? Do you know Elaine Ingham, who's soil scientist? You'd really enjoy her. She's somebody that you would. So how about let's change it. Let's change it to something you've read recently that has greatly influenced you. A book, a website, a blog.
I'm filtering through which ones are probably more appropriate for this audience, right? Because I'll read things about like behavioral psychology, but I really like, let's say, even within that realm, Brene Brown. I think Brene Brown, because we're humans, right? We have wonderful ideas, and we're sparked by curiosity to learn more about science and to better our world and be innovative. But ultimately, we're humans. And so how we are able to manage our own emotions, be self-aware, and to communicate with others and work well together is a huge part of what makes, I think, a society successful. And so most of my time, because I get to touch so much on the technical within work, most of my time outside of work is looking more at the like human aspect, like what is it that I can do to be braver with vulnerability and not have shame and communicate these things more clearly, or be honest with them about to myself, so that I can show up as a better whole human being at work and also at home at the dinner table with my family. So I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown. Are you?
Yeah, familiar, but not as much as I probably will be after this. So I'll probably do some more research.
She's really well known. She does research on vulnerability and shame and how it affects, and like how it comes up, how it affects just all of us, like how it affects our own trauma responses, how we relate with other people. And then, it's interesting because a lot of this to me is providing new words to a thing that you knew was there, but if you didn't have the words to describe it, you wouldn't be able to have a conversation about it. So gravity, if you didn't have the word for gravity and understand that concept, it'd be very difficult to talk about it with someone else. And people like Brene Brown, I find, are starting to really hone in on what are these things that we kind of have a feel for that exist, and giving them names. And then that gives us the power to talk about it and evolve past it.
So I told you about the fact that I was an activist, and I think I still am to some extent, but maybe it was a lot more of one when I was younger. One of the things that's a little discouraging to me with people under, let's say, 25 today, there's no magic to that age, but is that they are not as active in terms of protesting and others as I think my age group was. One, am I right about that? And if I am, why? Why do you think that's the case?
Oh, well, I mean,
Because I'm
Wow,
getting
that's a
in your
loaded
age
question.
group there.
I mean, I'm not the person to like the authority to respond to this, but I'll tell you my opinion or what I think.
Oh, I want your opinion, just your opinion,
Yeah.
that's all.
I think, I mean, first of all, total different time, right? In the 70s, anti-war. I think there was also like a lot of psychedelics, and I don't think that was a bad thing, honestly. It's a whole different time politically. And then now, I think we do see a lot of protests. I mean, we saw a lot of protests, especially at the start of the pandemic. And before that, we were seeing a lot of climate protests. I don't know. I don't know the numbers, so I can't be like, oh, that's like actually true. But it might be that the media doesn't cover it, or it's more normal, and so people don't make such a big deal. Like, oh, there's another protest. So I don't know that I agree with protesting less. I think there's a lot going on across the board.
Yeah, right. Changing back to more on your side, tell us about a tool. So it could be an internet-related tool. It could be a tool in your house that you've started to use over the last year that you never even knew about before that, let's say, that you really would like to share. Okay, tell other people because they could use it. And you're an internet-based kind of company, so maybe it's internet-related, but it could be something else.
In the last year, I have been using this. Is that the question?
I mean, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, I mean, something in the recent past, just so that it's something a little bit times relevant.
I'm gonna look.
So we've had speakers we've had speakers that have talked about that are in the ground farmers that have said, hey, it's this kind of a fork, a broad fork, for example, that I never even knew existed. We've had a lot of other speakers that have said it's this internet tool or that tool or whatever. Just anything that you've started to use.
Sure. So I like this tool called Data Studio. It's by Google, so it's datastudio.google.com. And you can connect it to any spreadsheet and it'll allow you to share information from so actually if you go to the registry page in that second section, there's a link there and you'll see, there you go, NRT sales with the fingers. So this is a Data Studio dashboard that I was able to create that connects to our private spreadsheets, but then shares an anonymized version publicly. How many NRTs we sold, what was the price, where were they retired, etc. And I love it. It's a free tool, and I constantly, based off of people's feedback on terms of what they're looking for, they would like to know more about this in Nori, how much was sold or where. I constantly add to this dashboard in those pages.
That is a great one because I'd not heard of it. You can already see by looking at this page that it combines a spreadsheet, it combines visuals, it combines all kinds of things. And so Mark, he's brought it up now, data. Well, he didn't bring it up. You can see it in the URL here, everybody. There's datastudio.google.com and then all the information about the Nori sheet that Mark's showing here. Yeah, that's a good one. No one's told us about that one before.
Okay, cool.
That's a really good one. So now go back to a little bit more personal. And this one's sometimes the toughest question I ever asked. By the way, I stole this from a guy named John Lee Dumas, who's a podcaster. He teaches about podcasting. He's a really good friend of mine. He does a podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire, and it's every day. He's done it 7,000 straight. No, not that many. Close. 7,000 straight days, because that would be almost 20 years. No, not that long. He's done it about 10. So that's 3,600 straight days, something like that. Anyway, tell us about something that's happened in your life that when it happened, it seemed really negative to you. And yet now as you look back on it, it actually turned out to be something that had a good outcome from it. A little bit of a question to think about. So
there's a couple. I'm just trying to figure out which one to share. Yeah, right. Let's. I tend to go on the side of super candid and authentic. So, if you actually exit out of this photo, and on the left corner there was like a black and white photo. Yeah. So Alden Donnelly there in the photo, she's the only other woman in that photo, is one of the founders of Nori, and she's one of my favorite people in the whole world. She's brilliant, and really is the reason we started in soil and started working with farmers, and has been working in the carbon markets for over 20 years. And so when I started Nori, my role, and still it's quite ambiguous because I do I kind of like a linchpin type of person. I just like fill in the gaps and help things move along, but it's not quite clear what I do. But I know I do a lot, and it's very helpful and impactful. And in that journey of trying to figure it out, I had put together a big event within the first 6 months of our company founding that was helpful. And then I thought, okay, well, as an engineer, like maybe I'll help out with methodology, and Alden was our like key stakeholder in that development. We had a hard time communicating. It was very difficult. And I think in that, like around month 9, or like right after a year of founding Nori, I had to take like a week off because I felt super burnt out. And I'm just super grateful to Alden because, she's only just a representation of something that like she helped me. She was like an ally in helping me understand maybe what I needed to face about where I really wanted to be working in terms of Nori and how I could contribute. And I took some time off, and I thought, oh, maybe this isn't for me. And I really thought like maybe I made a mistake, like quitting my job and starting this company. And in that 1 week, I felt very fearful. And but I took it off, and then I came back, and it felt like and I sat down with Alden, and we started brainstorming like what are new ways that we could work together. And we needed a lot of help on the sales side, and I said, yeah, I think you can help with that. And it's been awesome. And then Alden and I became like really, really good at working together to put big proposals together for supplies to sell to buyers. And so it seemed like the end of all time, and it seemed like me and Alden would never get along. And she's still one of my favorite human beings in the whole world, and very few people I think that highly of. So
that's awesome. I got to ask you this one just because we were talking about it before we started. There's an artist, a Grammy-winning artist whose name I'm forgetting, and Mark or Reed, go to it on the page, that you guys have worked with, and I've not heard of her. Tell us about. There we go. Imogen Heap.
Imogen Heap. Yeah, she's written a few.
Or Imogen.
Imogen. Yeah, Imogen. She's written it there. I think that actually goes to a podcast episode where we had her on. Or no, maybe we need to fix that link. Because we had her come on the podcast, the Reversing Climate Change podcast, and talk about what we did. And she's really wanted. Wait, first of all, back up. Are you familiar with NFTs and the art space?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes.
Okay, so for those who
maybe explain it for the audience a little. Yeah. Why don't you do that?
So for those who aren't familiar with, NFT is what stands for a non-fungible token. Tokens being some type of crypto token that's traded on the blockchain, etc. It's very authentic. You can't replicate it. But it's not used. It's not like a cryptocurrency. That's non-fungible part. So anyways, NFTs are now used to represent the most authentic way of transferring art. So if I give you like Imogen sell a song sample that she wrote and sold it as an NFT, you can prove that you own that rights to that, and no one can reuse that. And there's just, by way of the blockchain being what it is, immutable, there's no way to transfer it. So lots of people in the art space. We have a lot of people now in the NFT space. Actually, 3 of those are in the NFT space on the screen. Are working with Nori, like blind boxes too, helping artists to sell their NFTs, but then attach some type of fund to pay for removing carbon from the atmosphere as a way of addressing climate change. It's like mobilizing the art world to help address climate change. And Imogen was actually the first. She came to us. She found my colleague Paul on Twitter, sent him a DM on Twitter and said like, hey, would love to support Nori's work. And then they got on a Zoom call, and it all happened rather quickly. And then after that, we just kept getting more and more interest from people in the NFT space who want to attach impact. Because I mean, what is art? Art is something that evokes a feeling. And you know, there's some pretty negative feelings with regard to climate change, and there's carbon impacts that goes with minting NFTs and maintaining the blockchain. And so people are aware of this. And so they're trying to package in, hey, we're going to support positive climate works with the selling of the NFT.
Cool. That really explains it well. Tell us about what you see yourself doing in sometime, 10 years out in the future.
I'm going to have my own house, my own land. I'm going to be growing food. And I think I'll be on webinars a lot less often. And doing less of these videos. I've since felt much more inclined to just kind of pull in a little bit, like Wendell Berry a little.
Okay.
So that's what I imagine you'll see less of me on the internet.
Well, and the Thoreau, Walden, Pond, were the precursors to Wendell Berry. Incredibly well-known and famous today. And frankly, they spent a lot of their lives contemplating, and really laying back and not being out in the public eye. So it's not a bad thing to think about. Unfortunately, I've never gotten to that place. I'm one of these type A personality, that always has to be doing something, and it's not even often comfortable for me to just sit back. So anyway, audience, give us some questions. You guys have been really quiet, but you've been hanging out and listening, so that's cool, and watching. But please throw in some questions. We've got about 20 minutes left here. Are there any of these images on your Instagram page, which is very cool, by the way, that you'd like to talk about or give us some thoughts on, Alexsandra?
I guess that one that was just clicked, that was the event that I had briefly mentioned earlier. It was the first thing we did to announce our marketplace. And we just got, we had invited people from different spaces like soil and direct air capture. So Klaus Lackner, that professor I had mentioned, who was like the start of this whole journey for me, he's actually an official advisor to Nori. And he came from the direct air capture space. Thanks for the like. We had, people within regenerative agriculture, forestry, had people from corporations that buy offsets. And this photo was when we were working from a living room. That was Nori HQ original, and it was one of our co-founders just dining room table. That happened for like 6 months. It was a true entrepreneurial venture, but we all just thought we were crazy enough to do this. So then we put together this big event and had people come and provide some pretty honest feedback on the white paper that we had shared about like what we were trying to build in the marketplace. And people were very kind in their criticisms because they understood that we're just trying, like, we don't have all the answers. We're trying to share an idea and get back feedback to make the thing better. And so I think that's actually one of the, I'll say that just in general, when it comes to climate change and sustainability and innovation, I don't know what's up with society now, like just being so quick to judge and say like, oh, well, you think this, and I'm not really reacting so much within Nori, but I see it, like we criticize across the way and point fingers, as opposed to saying like, hey, have you considered that there might be this implication, and if you're trying to achieve this goal, here's another solution. I think the other person or the other party might respond like, hey, yeah, that might be more useful. So we found that in our work, it's super helpful when we share transparently what we're thinking in our methodology, in our documentation, and then people can read it and say like, hey, that doesn't work for this reason. And then, become part of the conversation to improve the development of whatever it is that we're trying to do, which is remove carbon from the atmosphere.
Awesome. So do you have any events planned in the near future that would be ones that you could talk about?
Not Nori events. We're so busy. Just trying to grow the company and the marketplace and launch this token. We are thinking to do an event soon, once we've launched our token. But we will. One of my co-founders, Jason, will be speaking at NFT.nyc in New York at the beginning of November, and I'll probably go to New York to do that as well. And then it's not really an event, but something that's fun that we've been working on is we're going to be announcing on the 1st of October a partnership with Greenfeet. Greenfeet is this great company that helps organizations to estimate their carbon footprints. So we help sell offsets, but we get a lot of customers asking us, okay, well, how much do we buy? And we're like, we don't know. We can't help you there. So we found a partner, Greenfeet, that actually does that. They will help you gather the information, make it really simple for you to figure out how much is your organization responsible for emitting carbon every month and every year, and then pairs that with reduction technologies as well as Nori carbon removal offsets.
Cool. Looking down the road again, that out 10 years, what land you're going to buy and the farm you're going to have, will it be down there in the south, or is it, what have you thought ahead that where in the country you'd like to have?
Well, I gotta do some research on the projections of sea level rise here because it's a real thing. I don't know that we'll be able to avoid it. It'll probably be here though, if the rate of increase in sea level rise is still quite at the pace that it is now, because my family is here and I'm very much attached to my family structure now. So also Latin America calls me too. There's a lot in South America that I just found really beautiful, and I love the culture. So
yeah. How about, again, you're a Cuban American, and how about going back to Cuba at any point? Would things have to change dramatically politically, or what?
Yeah, for sure. That's a tough one because we still can't spend US dollars in Cuba, and it'd just be really difficult. But I love Cuba. I've been there. It's lovely, and I still have some very, very distant family there. But yeah, unfortunately, Cuba's out for me. It's too difficult.
It's not a economic topic necessarily, although we usually say, because economics is anything that you do that makes a little money making the planet better. So it's really broad. I mean, it just could fit all over. And we kind of say the only things that are probably not within the realm of that are things like sex trafficking, or there's a very limited number of subjects. But in today's world, there's a lot of discussion about the kind of reparations and other things needed for people who have been discriminated against that are immigrants and that are not Americans, and your parents are immigrants. Did you remember from your childhood discrimination that worked in a way that was not good for you and your family, and how would your parents maybe react to that? What are some things that we should be doing different as it relates to immigrants?
I really appreciate you asking the question, and that there's an awareness, and that you ask the question and you give some space to that. To be honest, I am fairly white in my appearance, and so I have not had any, and I grew up here, so I have not had any racial discrimination. I would say it's discrimination on the basis of my sex all the time. It's still very frustrating, but it's helpful that people will like you just have an awareness and acknowledge and live space, and that's the practice. It's really just a continuous practice of acknowledging that these things have happened, checking in with each other, but not letting it define us or determine what we can or cannot do, or others can or cannot do, and then just continuously have that conversation and practice, and hopefully move on and evolve beyond these things. But yeah, I think my family has, and these are real issues, and I appreciate that people are having these conversations, and hopefully it'll get better and better every day.
They need to eliminate. Yeah. Just because you mentioned it, what was the last thing you remember where you encountered some discrimination as being a woman?
You know, it's
You ask my wife, and I guarantee she could tell you 2 or 3 that she remembers.
it's like subtle. It's so funny. It's like subtle things that just drive me crazy. Like, you know, yeah, for example, I won't name names. We're a while back we were doing a hiring process, and we were looking for an engineer. And I remember asking one of my colleagues what were the things that needed to be on that job description, because I was managing the process. And they said the engineer needed to have, I think it was Node.js, which is a back-end JS framework, and JS stands for JavaScript. And JavaScript is a front-end thing. Like JavaScript is what created most of what we're looking at, in TypeScript. And so there are all these different things of JS. And I remember my other colleagues saying, "Oh, here's a great resume. We should screen them." I said, "No, they don't have JS, Node.js. Oh, but they have JavaScript." I understand, but they don't have Node.js, so they're not qualified as a backend engineer for this. No, it's all the same. No, it's not, I said. And they insisted, yes, it is. It's just different libraries, the same thing. They're very different in syntax, like completely different. It would take, and what you think and how you think, it's just different skills. So, but me being kind of always more prone to acknowledge that, hey, maybe I don't know. Like, if you're going to push that hard on me, like, I probably don't. Maybe you're right. Fine. I'm going to take it. And we went back to the original person that had told us, and he said, no, this doesn't work because they don't have Node.js. And the other guy's like, oh, no, but aren't they the same? And he's like, no, they're very different. And I'm just like blown. I'm like, why didn't you hear what I was saying? I know, because I played around for a while, and I like taught myself these languages, and I've done courses in them, and I'm no pro, and I probably couldn't write a line of code now, but I'm familiar with the context of them. So simple things like that, where just because it's coming from this face, they're like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, dude, they're different. So.
By the way, I don't think we've ever done this on a webinar, but I'm going to have Arib, because I think he's running the screen right now, do this. Arib, on this website, right-click on the tab, and then I want you to go to View Page Source down at the bottom. So go way down. There it is. This is showing everyone the code that is used to develop this page. And there is JavaScript in here. By the way, I am not a coder at all. My wife is. My wife was one of the original sort of web designers way back. And so I don't know enough to know what the difference with the JavaScript versus no JavaScript. But just to show people, because a lot of people don't even know that this is there. We use it sometimes because we want to see what underlying web source was used for web pages. So it'll say WordPress, for example, in places on web pages. And we use a platform called Kajabi, and it'll say Kajabi. I know enough to look within the code to be able to read that. But a lot of people don't even know you can do that and see what the code is on a web page. So anyway,
sometimes I do that, and I'm like, sometimes I do. And I'm like, oh, I like that landing page. Can I see what they use? And I go,
yeah. So you just right click and then go to View Page Source. My wife taught me that one a long time ago. So we're getting close to the end here. I still don't see some questions from the audience. You guys are being unbelievably shy. Your webpage is very well done, by the way. Give us some last thoughts, Alexsandra, from yourself that you'd like to impart to an audience that is people that care about the planet and want to be entrepreneurs as it relates to it. So that's why we say, make a little money making the planet better. And so give us some last thoughts.
Well, you can lots of call to actions here. So if you want to take action, you feel like you haven't really felt confident or know how to take action on your carbon footprint, pay for removing carbon and supporting farmers in this work. It does more than just remove CO2 from the atmosphere. It helps to spur a whole economy where farmers can switch over their practices that are much more regenerative, which means that they can restore soil and land, which means that we have a stronger, more resilient food supply chain. You can do that at nori.com. It's very, very simple. You just enter in your credit card information, how much you want to buy, etc. Also, if you're a business and you're looking to do this, please also send us an email. There's a For Business page up there. Happy to talk about how to do this for businesses. If you just want to listen and learn more, my colleague Ross, we're currently on a pause right now, but there are at least 150 episodes of our Reversing Climate Change podcast, which is really fantastic. We have really cool guests, so I would say check that out. And with regard to being entrepreneurs, there's actually a group called Air Miners that I really love and totally support. They are a group of entrepreneurs in this space too, but they focused on actually, they were entrepreneurs doing their own solutions, and then they came together and created Air Miners, which is just a community base for anybody interested in the carbon removal climate tech space. And there they go. And they host events and webinars and Slack, and even like they have like workshops and like boot camps, so you can learn about carbon removal. They're great. So I highly recommend them if you're like trying to get into this and you want to meet more entrepreneurs, maybe a potential co-founder. I would come to this space and join the community.
By the way, what great info. This is awesome. By the way, and thank you for complimenting Areeb. He and Mark are awesome at doing what they're doing in the background on websites. Yeah. They don't get a lot of acknowledgement from our audience or from our speakers. So I appreciate that.
No, this was great. Thank you so much, guys. I really liked that you were just on hit and flowing through the images. It's great.
And we have a question here from the audience. So I'm going to put that on here. Aloha from Maui. My partner and I are beginning a regenerative farm and are curious about suggestions you may have for a farm that is in its infant stages during the establishment phase. So I think, they're just getting it started. So what would you say to them?
I don't know that I have anything to offer other than to read David Montgomery's books. Are you familiar with David Montgomery?
I am now.
Yeah. Or just get in that space. I'm not the expert on the soil side. I know enough to understand and appreciate the science of what's happening ecologically. But when it comes to farming practices, can't help you. But I appreciated that there was a question.
Yeah, by the way, I'm going to look and see here who asked this. And I'm going to say that from our perspective, from each, we have thousands of hours of presentations because we do two kinds of presentations here. One, we do one-off interviews with people like Alexsandra, and then we ask people to do courses for us. So those courses could be anywhere from the shortest we've ever had is 3 hours to the longest being Mark Shepard's, who's over 150 hours. So we did 150 different sessions. Mark Shepard would be somebody that I'd highly recommend that you look into from a regenerative farm. Obviously, recently we've really focused on holistic farm management and Alan Savory, and we've probably had Mark or 6 or 7 sessions already now with different speakers. Abby Smith was our most recent one. You might want to listen to her. I mentioned Elaine Ingham earlier with soil science, but you can find all these on the EAT community. And there's free membership to the EAT community. There's a paid membership. We're not trying to advertise here, but there are a lot of free sessions you can get from us where you can learn. So, well, we are getting right at the top of the hour. I hope that was helpful for the answer to your question. And it was Darlin that asked. So thank you, Darlin. It's a great question. And this has been awesome, Alexsandra. I hope we can talk again another time, maybe even have some of your co-founders come on with us, or, boy, anytime you want, recommend speakers to us. Interestingly, that's our biggest challenge. We don't get as many amazing speakers as we like. When we get them, they almost always are amazing, like you've been. But we like to do 5 or 6 of these a week, and we do 2 or 3 now. So, and we were at the point, we took a little bit of a break in 2020, and we had gotten up to where we were having 10 to 12 a week in 2019. And so we don't want, that was too many, but we want to get back up to 5 or 6 again.
Yeah. Sure. This was a pleasure. Thanks so much for the time. It was a nice way to end the Friday.
Yeah, and go have some fun for the weekend. The same thing for the whole audience. And Mark and Reed, thank you. You guys are awesome as always. Why don't you take us out? Bye.